Some nights feel different. The air shifts, shadows deepen, and something ancient stirs beneath the surface. Tonight is one of those nights. If you're still watching, then you're brave enough to continue. But beware, once you start, there's no turning back. It began on an ordinary evening. Claire walked through the deserted streets of her small town, the moon hanging low and casting eerie glows on the wet pavement. She was coming from the bookstore, her favorite escape from reality. She clutched her newly purchased book tightly, feeling its weight in her hands. She always felt safe here, until tonight. There was something wrong. She couldn't explain it. The quiet felt oppressive. The usual hum of distant cars was absent. Only the sound of her footsteps echoed in the darkness. As she passed an alley, she stopped. A strange noise caught her attention. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. Breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing. Claire turned, peering into the shadows, but nothing was there. She shook her head, laughing at herself. "It's just your imagination," she whispered, continuing her walk. But the breathing didn't stop. It grew louder, closer. Claire quickened her pace, her heartbeat matching her steps. She glanced over her shoulder, and that's when she saw her. A woman, standing at the end of the alley. She was strikingly beautiful, wearing a long black coat that flowed with the wind. Her eyes shimmered under the dim streetlights, piercing through the night. Claire hesitated. The woman smiled, wide, too wide. It wasn't comforting. It was unsettling. Claire felt a chill crawl up her spine. She shook it off and kept moving. Claire. She froze. How did this stranger know her name? Slowly, she turned around, but the woman was gone. The alley was empty. Claire's heart raced. She spun back and broke into a sprint, desperate to get home. She could hear her name being whispered from every corner, every shadow. By the time Claire reached her apartment, she was out of breath, her hands trembling as she fumbled with her keys. Slamming the door behind her, she locked it, leaning against it for support. She tried to convince herself it was just her mind playing tricks. But deep down, she knew better. Her phone buzzed. A text message. She hoped it was her best friend, Sarah. But when she opened it, her blood ran cold. "I'm closer than you think." The message came from an unknown number. She dropped the phone, backing away from it like it was toxic. Her mind raced. Who was this? How did they know her name? Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the room plunged into darkness. Claire grabbed her phone from the floor, using its flashlight to illuminate the room. The shadows seemed to twist and writhe around her. She felt eyes watching her, though she couldn't see them. Then, she heard it. That breathing, right behind her. Claire screamed and bolted for the door, but it wouldn't budge. Something, or someone, was on the other side, holding it shut. She could hear soft, eerie laughter echoing through the room. Her heart pounded in her chest as she turned to face the darkness. The woman from the alley stood there, her face half hidden in shadow, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Claire stumbled backward, her voice caught in her throat. "You can't run from me, Claire," the woman whispered. "I've been waiting for you." Claire grabbed a chair and hurled it toward the woman, but it passed right through her. She wasn't human. She wasn't real. The woman's form flickered like a distorted image on a broken TV, her face morphing into something grotesque, a twisted, monstrous version of herself. Claire backed into the wall, tears streaming down her face. "What do you want from me?" she cried. The creature grinned, her teeth sharp and glinting. "You're mine now," she hissed. "You've always been mine." Claire's mind raced, trying to find a way out. She remembered the old book she'd bought earlier that night. It was still in her bag. Desperation clawed at her as she fumbled through her belongings, pulling it out. The title glowed faintly under the flashlight's beam, The Shadows Within. As she flipped through the pages, Claire realized this wasn't an ordinary book. The symbols and text were ancient, unreadable, but familiar. She didn't know how or why, but her instincts told her it was the key. The creature lunged, its hands reaching for Claire. In a panic, she shouted the first words that came to her mind from the book. A blinding light erupted from the pages, illuminating the room. The creature screamed, recoiling in pain. Claire kept reading, her voice trembling but determined. The symbols burned brighter, and the shadows in the room began to dissipate. The woman's form flickered violently, her screams turning into guttural roars. "This isn't over!" she shrieked before vanishing into a wisp of smoke. The room fell silent. Claire dropped the book, collapsing to the floor in exhaustion. The nightmare wasn't over.